Call the Honourable Pete Hodgson.
Well, that's very good of you, Mr. Speaker. I have listened with intent to the Minister of Customs and his contribution to the debate. It was, as usual, an informative contribution. We were told in some detail of the evils of counterfeiting and the fact that it is not a victimless crime and the fact that one's helicopter might fall out of the sky and on it went. It was then the Minister of Customs' pleasure to welcome the passage of the legislation and how keen he was to see it arriving and to see it arriving in time for the World Cup. Well, Labor supports this legislation. My colleague, the Honourable Marion Street, said it was okay, and that's kind of therefore how it is. And so there's not going to be any difficulty in getting this legislation through the House today, but it is time to ask some questions of the government. And I am sorry that I'm speaking after the Honourable Maurice Williamson, because he's very good at answering questions. However, he can't take a second call, and he might be good enough to give answers to questions such as he knows them to another National Party Speaker in order that we can have these questions answered. Here are the questions. Question one is probably a bit unanswerable, but here it goes. What took you so long? What took the government so long? What? Yes, it is a toughie. The Honourable Maurice Williamson, there's a person in the back of the House that don't quite... Well, you do.
Order.
Mr. Speaker. No, it's fine by me. It's just a rowdy little number. Mr. Speaker, what took so long? Because the legislation came back to the House 2 years ago. 2 years ago. And since that time, all manner of legislation has passed. Not this. What took so long? And that is a hard one, as Maurice Williamson said. I think it is the hardest. He might like to give an answer to a subsequent National Party Speaker. The second question is concerning prosecutions. In September 2009, a Ministry of Education official said, and let me now just find the press statement, 24th of September 2009, made two comments. The first was that the Ministry will be trying for more prosecutions so the offences have the desired deterrent effect. No one is going to be put off. This is the Intellectual Property Team Senior Analyst, Mr. George Wardell. No one, said Mr. Wardell, is going to be put off trading in counterfeit goods until there are a few prosecutions. So that's the Ministry's position, and it seems a reasonable one. We have a serious commitment, says a Customs Operations Manager, Mr. Dave Meredith, one of the Minister's officials. We have a serious commitment to intellectual property rights goods now, and that's going to get more intense when we can investigate and prosecute. We will be seeking to make a deterrent, and we will be attacking it straight on. So this is me reading verbatim the prosecutorial sentiments of officials from Customs and from the Ministry of Economic Development. That was 2 years ago, September 2009. They had just witnessed the legislation coming back into the House and presumably were anticipating it passing into law. They also said, and here is another reading from the same press statement, there were no prosecutions under the 2002 Trademark Act. So I'm assuming that that legislation was regarded by officials as being insufficient, presumably because it's out of date, to effect a prosecution, and that they were looking for prosecutions once the new legislation came to place. So the second question is, did any prosecutions occur between 2009, September 2009 and September 2011? My guess is that they didn't. So we've got the government standing up and saying that they're terribly keen on protecting copyright, terribly keen on promoting trademarks, terribly keen on ensuring that this is not a victimless crime and that the victims therefore be protected, but not passing it, knowing that the legislation the previous legislation wasn't able to be enforced. And my third question is this: how come on the day before New Zealand Tonga the World Cup started, how come we think we can pass this law onto the law books and make it work? Surely all of the counterfeit goods that are going to be sold during the World Cup have already come across our border. Surely all of the interceptions that could have taken place have taken place. Surely if there are counterfeit goods being sold because of the Rugby World Cup, they are being sold today and yesterday and actually tomorrow. Tomorrow this legislation may not have received the royal assent. The Governor-General might be busy. The officials might have not finished tidying it up. They have to shift semicolons around for a few days, typically, before legislation is sent over for the Governor-General to assent to offer the royal assent. So it seems to me that this legislation will not become law for at least some days yet. I think the idea that we're passing this legislation now because it is timely is fatuous. I think the government is making it up. I don't think the passage of this legislation has got anything to do with the Rugby World Cup. What I think is that this legislation... Well, what would the member for Waitaki like to offer? By way of explanation, will she be able to take a call? Will the good lady be able to take a call and explain why it is that for 24 hours before the Rugby World Cup gets underway, this legislation is going to complete its third reading, and that any time in the previous 2 years would not have been necessary because the Rugby World Cup hadn't started? Would she... I'm grumpy. I'm merely asking questions. I'm merely asking the dear lady questions, and I would be interested to see whether or not she give answers. In fact, I might resume my seat presently in order... That's a good idea, is it? I'll do that. I'll resume my seat presently and let's see whether the member for Waitaki will get up and offer joyous answers to these questions. I would love to hear what they are.
The question is, I call